In the heart of the lush valley, surrounded by dense forests and towering hills, there lay the village of Nyeka. A place where time seemed to slow, where the land was fertile and gave generously to those who worked it. The villagers lived in harmony with the land, cultivating crops that fed not only their families but the neighboring villages as well. Nyeka was a village steeped in tradition, rules passed down through generations, guiding its people in their daily lives. Among these ancient customs, there was one rule that was universally known and followed by all. Never leave your clothes on the line after sunset. This rule was more than just a suggestion, it was an unspoken law of survival, ingrained into the very fabric of the village's existence. It was not out of fear of thieves or even the unpredictable weather that the villagers rushed to gather their clothes before nightfall. No, it was something far more sinister, something far older, woven deep into the heart of their way of life. As the sun dipped below the hills and the shadows grew long, a quiet urgency would spread across the village. Children were called in from their play, and women, their hands still busy with the evening's chores, would shout to remind the men. The elders would mutter quiet prayers, their heads bowed, while the younger ones, who had grown up hearing the stories, would instinctively rush to the clotheslines. It was a rule that no one dared to break. To do so would mean inviting trouble, something the villagers spoke of only in whispers. For generations, the people of Nyeka had believed that clothes left outside after dark became a doorway, a bridge between the living and the unseen world. This was when the Asogi spirits, mischievous and unpredictable beings of the night, would come to play. The Asogi spirits were neither good nor evil, they were simply curious. They were the watchers of the night, roaming silently, drawn to the essence left behind by human presence. They had no ill intentions, but their playfulness often led to mischief. To the spirits, clothes were more than mere fabric. They were imbued with a person's essence, sweat, warmth, and the faintest traces of a life lived. And when left under the moonlight, the Asogi spirits would weave their magic into the threads, creating patterns that no human could understand. The villagers often said that these spirits did not know what they did. To them, it was a game, a pastime. But to the humans, it was a curse. A curse that could never be undone once set into motion. And so, the rule was clear, never leave your clothes on the line after sunset. Nkemdalim, or Nkem as she was known to her friends, was not like most young women in Nyeka. At 24, she was independent, headstrong, and practical. While many of her peers embraced the customs and traditions taught by their elders, Nkem saw them as nothing more than unnecessary restrictions. She didn't believe in spirits, in omens, or in the importance of following rules without questioning them. To her, life was about practicality, hard work, and getting ahead, not about bowing to ancient fears. Nkem was known for her sharp wit and relentless work ethic. She ran a small but thriving vegetable farm that supplied much of the village market. Her days were filled from sunrise to sunset, hauling baskets of yams and cassava to the market, negotiating with buyers, and then rushing back home to tend to her fields. There was no time for superstition in her life. She had often heard the elders speak of the dangers of leaving clothes outside after sunset, but to her, it was just one of the many old wives' tales the villagers told to keep the younger generation in line. "Why should I care about spirits when there's real work to be done?" she would often mutter to herself. "I've never seen a spirit in my life, and I don't plan to start now." It wasn't just the clothesline rule that frustrated Nkem. The elders had a long list of other rules she found equally absurd. Don't whistle at night or you'll call the spirits. Don't sweep after dark or you'll sweep away your luck. And, of course, the one that irritated her most, never leave your clothes outside after sunset. Every time one of the older villagers reminded her of the rule, Nkem would roll her eyes in disbelief. Her mother, Omalika, was one of the strongest voices advocating for respect of these traditions. "Nkem, you are too stubborn for your own good," Omalika would scold, her tone laced with concern as she washed clothes by the fire or prepared the evening meal. These rules are not meant to make our lives harder, they are meant to protect us. They keep us safe. Nkem would scoff at her mother's words. Safe from what, Mama? The moon? Spirits that I've never even seen? Omalika would sigh deeply, her face showing the exhaustion of years of trying to impart wisdom to her headstrong daughter. Some things are bigger than our understanding, Nkem. You don't have to believe in the spirits, but you must respect what has kept this village in harmony for generations. Her brother, Chika, was a bit more cautious than Nkem. Though he too didn't fully understand the need for the village's many superstitions, he respected them. One day, you'll understand the importance of these rules, Nkem, he would say, his voice more gentle than stern. I just hope it's not too late when you do. But Nkem wasn't one to be easily swayed by her family's concerns. I'll be fine, she would reply, I'm not a child who believes in ghost stories. Even outside her home, Nkem felt the pressure to conform. In the village marketplace, older women would exchange looks and gossip about her. That girl thinks she knows everything, they would whisper. Let her break the rules. Let her see what happens. But Nkem was resolute. Why should I listen to them? These rules are just relics of the past. She felt a fierce need to carve out her own path, to forge a life that was not bound by the invisible chains of ancient traditions. One evening, after a particularly tiring day in the fields, Nkem dragged herself home, her body aching and covered in the dust of her labor. The sun had set, and the village of Nyeka was alive with its usual evening sounds, the laughter of children chasing each other, the call of women asking for water, and the rhythmic pounding of yams in mortar bowls. But none of it mattered to Nkem. All she wanted was a moment of peace, to sit down and rest her weary body. As she entered her small compound, her eyes immediately landed on her favorite purple wrapper. It was the one she wore on special occasions, her most treasured possession. Earlier that day, while helping her neighbor prepare a meal, she had spilled palm oil on it. The stain was stubborn, and no matter how hard she scrubbed, it refused to come out. Sighing in frustration, Nkem grabbed a bucket and filled it with water from the clay pot. She began scrubbing the fabric with determination, her hands moving methodically to remove every trace of the stain. By the time she finished, the moon was rising, casting a soft glow over the compound. She stepped back to admire her work, the purple fabric now clean and ready to be dried. I'll just leave it on the line tonight, Nkem thought to herself. The breeze will help it dry faster, and I can pick it up first thing in the morning. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her mind, never leave clothes on the line at night. But Nkem quickly dismissed the thought. It's just an old superstition, she muttered under her breath as she carefully hung the wrapper on the line, which stretched between two bamboo poles in the corner of the compound. She closed the door behind her and lay down on her mat, the day's fatigue pulling her into a deep, restless sleep. As the moon rose higher in the sky, a strange stillness fell over the village. The usual nighttime sounds, crickets chirping, frogs croaking, seemed muted, as if nature itself was holding its breath. In Nkem's compound, the purple wrapper swayed gently, though there was no breeze. A faint shimmer hung in the air around the fabric, like heat rising from a fire. The Asoji spirits had arrived. They were creatures of the night, drawn to the essence of humanity. They had no form, no tangible shape. They were formless, silent, yet their presence was unmistakable. The spirits hovered near the clothesline, their energy pulsing in the moonlight, drawn irresistibly to the fabric hanging in the cool air. For the Asoji, clothes were more than just garments. They were a vessel, a reflection of the human spirit, imbued with the warmth, sweat, and scent of life itself. And so, when left under the moon's cold light, they became a beacon for the spirits. They circled the clothesline, humming softly, their energy vibrating in the air. The wrapper fluttered unnaturally in the stillness of the night. The spirits moved closer, their presence weaving through the fabric, threading it with silver strands that shimmered in the moonlight. They hummed with quiet satisfaction as they wove their magic, manipulating the cloth, bending it to their will. But Nkem was unaware of this dark play. She slept soundly inside her hut, unaware that the spirits had begun their work on the wrapper she had so carelessly left on the line. When Nkem awoke the next morning, the first thing she noticed was the stillness in the air. The usual sounds of the village, the clamor of children playing, the chatter of women, were absent. The air felt unnaturally quiet, and an odd chill had settled over the land. Nkem rubbed her eyes and got up, making her way to the clothesline. As she reached for the purple wrapper, a cold shiver ran down her spine. The fabric felt different. "What's happened to it?" she whispered, her heart racing. The once vibrant purple color had faded, and silver threads now ran through the fabric, shimmering faintly in the daylight. It was as though the wrapper had been transformed overnight, its essence altered by something she could not comprehend. She shook her head. "It must be the moonlight playing tricks on my eyes," she muttered. But deep inside, she felt a sense of unease, something she couldn't shake. "It's just clothes," she tried to convince herself, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. As the day wore on, Nkem tried to push the unsettling feeling aside. She had a busy schedule ahead. She needed to visit the market, deliver the fresh produce she had harvested, and check on the crops in the field. Her mind was consumed with these tasks, and she tried to focus on the rhythm of her daily routine. But no matter how hard she tried, the strange feeling that something was wrong kept creeping into her thoughts. While carrying a basket of yams to the shed, Nkem felt a strange sensation running down the back of her neck. It was as if someone was watching her, her skin prickled, her hair stood on end. She turned quickly, but there was no one there. Just the usual quiet of her compound, the distant sounds of children playing, and the rustling of the trees in the breeze. Her heart began to race. She shook her head, telling herself it was nothing, just a figment of her tired imagination. Yet, the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave her. It lingered like an unwelcome shadow, following her every move. Later, as she was cooking her midday meal, something even stranger happened. She thought she heard her name whispered softly, carried on the wind. "Nkem." The voice was so faint that she thought it might have been the breeze playing tricks on her. But when it came again, louder this time, "Nkem." She froze, the knife she was holding clattering onto the stone. Her heart thudded in her chest, and the room seemed to close in on her. She glanced around nervously, but no one was there. The feeling of unease, once a quiet murmur, now gripped her entirely. She stepped back from the cooking pot, the warmth of the fire now feeling cold and oppressive. "It's just my imagination," Nkem muttered, trying to calm herself, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. By midday, word began to spread through the village. Children who had walked past Nkem's compound complained of sudden chills, despite the heat of the day. "I felt cold walking near her house," a young boy said, shivering as though the air itself had turned icy. The older villagers whispered amongst themselves, their faces marked with suspicion. "Something's not right with that girl," one woman said, her voice trembling. "She left her clothes out last night." Another man, his face grim, added, "Now the spirits are angry. This is what happens when you ignore the rules." She invited them in. Let her see what happens next. Others, however, were less convinced. "It was just a mistake," said Adiz, Nkem's close friend. "We've all forgotten something at one point. Why should she be blamed so harshly?" But even Adiz's words couldn't dispel the growing fear in the air. The whispers continued, growing louder with each passing hour, and soon, the village was on edge. By the time the sun began to set, Nkem could feel the weight of the village's judgment pressing down on her. The usual bustle of evening preparations felt muted, as though the villagers were moving around her in a strange, unspoken avoidance. Even her younger siblings seemed to shy away from her, refusing to touch her purple wrapper, now hanging in her compound. It was as though the cloth itself had become cursed. That night, as Nkem lay on her mat, sleep eluded her. The whispers in her mind, of the villagers' gossip, of the strange voice calling her name, of the silver threads that had appeared in the fabric, grew louder. She tossed and turned, unable to find peace. The strange occurrences felt too much like a warning, a sign that she had angered the spirits, that her mistake would come at a cost. By morning, Kim had no choice but to face the consequences. The elders had called a meeting in the village square, and her name was on their lips. She knew she had no escape. She would have to answer for her actions. When she arrived, the village was already gathered in hushed anticipation. The elders sat on their raised platform, their eyes fixed on her. Mama Azu, the eldest and most revered of the villagers, was the first to speak. Her face was stern, and her gaze pierced Nkem to the core. Nkem, Mama Azu's voice was firm, commanding. You have broken one of the most sacred rules of our people. You have invited the spirits into your life by leaving your clothes out after dark. Do you understand what you have done? Nkem's throat tightened. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She had been so sure that the old superstitions didn't matter, that they were just stories meant to frighten the younger generation. But now, faced with the elders' stern eyes and the weight of their words, she couldn't deny that something had gone terribly wrong. I didn't think it would matter, Nkem whispered, her voice barely audible. It's just clothes, just a piece of fabric. What harm could it do? Mama Azu's gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained steady. It is not just clothes. Clothes carry your essence, your warmth, your energy. They hold pieces of your soul. The Asoji spirits are not evil, Nkem, but they do not understand us. They do not know the harm they cause. When you left your clothes under the moon, you invited them to weave their magic into your life. The crowd murmured in agreement, and Nkem could feel the weight of their judgment like a heavy stone pressing down on her chest. What must I do to make it right? Nkem finally asked, her voice breaking as she realized the gravity of her mistake. Mama Azu looked at her with a mixture of pity and compassion. You must make amends, Nkem. You must return the wrapper to the spirits and offer them a gift in exchange for your carelessness. Nkem nodded, though her heart was heavy. She knew what she had to do, but she also knew that the road to redemption would not be easy. That night, as the full moon hung high in the sky, Nkem stood at the edge of her compound, holding the purple wrapper in her hands. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her palms were slick with sweat. She had prepared the offerings as Mama Azu had instructed, a small bowl of palm oil, kola nuts, and white chalk. These were the sacred gifts, meant to appease the spirits. The air felt thick, charged with energy, and the clothesline seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. Nkem took a deep breath, steeling herself. This was it. She would return the wrapper and offer her apology, hoping that the Asoji spirits would accept her atonement. As she hung the wrapper on the line, she carefully placed the tray of offerings beneath it. The chill in the air seemed to deepen as she knelt and began to speak the words Mama Azu had taught her. Asoji spirits, weavers of the unseen, I return what I should not have offered. Accept these gifts and leave my soul in peace. At first, there was no response. The night was still, the only sound the faint rustling of the leaves in the trees. Nkem's heart raced. Was this a sign that the spirits had accepted her offering? Or was it a warning to leave the ritual incomplete? The air grew colder, and a low hum filled the air, barely audible but unmistakable. Nkem's breath caught in her throat. She glanced at the wrapper. It shimmered slightly, the silver threads from the previous night reappearing in the fabric. The spirits were listening. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed through the compound, knocking over the tray of offerings. The palm oil spilled across the ground, the kola nuts scattered. Kim's heart skipped a beat. Had she angered the spirits by disrupting the ritual? But she didn't turn away. She gathered the spilled offerings, placing them back on the ground as the whispers grew louder. The wind seemed to be testing her resolve, pushing her to abandon the task, to turn back. But she did not. She knelt again, her voice trembling but determined. Asoji spirits, I return what I should not have offered. Accept these gifts and leave my soul in peace. As soon as the words left her lips, the silver threads in the wrapper began to fade. The whispers ceased. The air warmed, and the oppressive silence lifted. The next morning, Kim woke to find the wrapper restored to its former state, the silver threads gone, and its vibrant purple color shining under the morning sun. She felt a wave of relief wash over her, but also something more profound, a sense of understanding, of respect for the traditions she had once dismissed. The villagers, who had watched her from a distance with wary eyes, now greeted her with quiet nods. The fear and suspicion that had hung over her had dissipated, replaced by a newfound sense of harmony. The ritual had worked. But for Kim, the journey was far from over. She knew now that the balance between progress and tradition was delicate, and that some things were beyond human understanding. The spirits, though unseen, had their place in the world, and she had learned to respect that. As she folded the purple wrapper that had once caused so much trouble, she smiled to herself. It's not just about the clothes, she whispered. It's about respecting the unseen, the things we cannot explain. And with that, Kim became not only a keeper of tradition but a teacher to the younger villagers, sharing her experience and ensuring that the lessons of the past would be passed down to future generations. In the end, Nyeka thrived, its people united in their respect for the balance between the seen and the unseen, between tradition and progress.